My memories go back a long way, and a long way from here. I just want to start with saying, no traditions, no celebration, no Christmas. You know what? I can't even imagine that. But given the setting was Karachi, Pakistan, which is a Muslim country, how does a British, Scottish, with a bit of Indian family, how do they celebrate Christmas? Well, Anglo-Indians is what I was, because we were part Indian, but mostly British and Scottish. So we were called Anglo-Indians. And Anglo-Indians were a very large and important part of the population of both India and Pakistan. And we were free to celebrate our own religions. Now, all of the traditions that were my family traditions were not necessarily a part of everybody's traditions. Other people had other traditions, but for me, when I was 12, I decided I was going to start a school because I wanted to teach English to the non-speaking children of the place where I lived. And all I needed was a mat, a tin trunk full of books and school supplies, and a nice big shady tree. So gradually I did teach other subjects as well. And, you know, it was fine because they just loved everything we did. They didn't go to school because school was not compulsory. So they would sit and they would listen. And we also did fundraisers. We did things like, you might know what some of these things are, food sales, things like concerts, things like plays, all kinds of, even country fairs, we even did those. And we would raise the money and put it aside, and then we would get into rehearsal for Christmas caroling and also for doing a nativity play. So all of this started in the summertime and then continued as the year went on. And meanwhile, my church youth group was also rehearsing for a nativity play, and also the Sunday school. So I was here, there, and everywhere. So the youth group was also preparing for a midnight Christmas Eve service. And the Sunday school was preparing a party. And we didn't call it a Christmas party, we called it a Christmas tree. And in mid-December, our little school staged our nativity play, right in our living room. It was a nice big area, and we'd have people come in, and we'd set the chairs up for them, and we would do our nativity play. In our living room, which, by the way, was not called a living room. It was called a drawing room. And why was that? It was because the families and the guests would withdraw to that room for after-dinner conversation. Now, originally, that was not the case. Only the women withdrew to leave the men to their business. Well, we're not going to get into that right here. So, my youth group and my Sunday school, we staged our nativity presentations, and then it was time for my little school to go caroling. Now, we lived in a compound which was a gated, walled community, and it housed multiple families. There were 3 big buildings, and there were rows of service quarters, and there were lots and lots of children. So we could go to all of these places without fear of traffic. You know, you didn't have traffic that you had to worry about, you just went there. Now, we didn't get any figgy pudding, but we did get money. That was the way that the people would thank the carolers. So we take that money and we would put it in our fundraising account. So now what happened then was when we had this party for all of the compound children. Now these children, many of whom would never have we did, it was all financed by our fundraising efforts. We had sandwiches, we had cake, we had cookies, which we call biscuits, and we had whatever else my mom would whip up, you know. We had candy, let's not forget the candy. We didn't call it candy, we called it sweets. And we played games, we sang, we danced, we ate, and then the highlight of the afternoon was the arrival of Santa Claus. Now the Christmas Eve midnight service was a service very much like we would have in the church here, except it was run by the youth group. I delivered the message, and my friend Rita sang "O Holy Night" down the crack of midnight. And then we knew that Christmas Day had arrived. Now, going to my own in my own family, there were traditions that maybe weren't, as I said, other Anglo-Indian family traditions, but it was a very special time because my brother, who was 15 years older than me, he would drag this huge Christmas tree because our ceilings were really, really high there. He dragged us into the living room or the drawing room, and there it sat, undecorated, until sometime that night. When I woke up in the morning, I had a four-poster bed, and it was all decorated with garlands and streamers and balloons, and there were gifts all the way around my bed. And in my slippers, there were little gifts that were unwrapped, kind of like our stockings over here. And in the living room, or the drawing room, because we're so used to saying living room, in the drawing room, the tree was beautifully decorated, and around it there were more gifts for other members of the family and for some of our neighbors. Now, it was so magical. It was like Santa Claus, or Father Christmas, as we called him, had brought a whole crew of elves with him. It was, in fact, the work of my very special brother. I'm sure my sister probably helped as well, but she left when I was 10 years old. She went to England to get married, so she wasn't there. But my brother continued this tradition. Now, Christmas breakfast, it was similar to what we have here, with maybe a couple of exceptions. They were acquired tastes. On our toast, we would have Marmite, which is I don't know if you've had it before, but it's a yeast extract spread, and it is an acquired taste. I tried it, I liked it, so I was happy. We also had marmalade and stuff like that as well. And there was also something called dye, which was kind of like a thick Greek yogurt. But I never acquired a taste for that. Only my dad could eat that. So in addition, there was porridge, and there was fruit. Some of it was similar to here, and some of it were fruit that I have never seen again. And there were eggs from my dad's small poultry operation. And our cook would fry these eggs up on a charcoal fire. We did not have a stove or any other electrical appliances. There was a time much later on when my mom got one of these, I guess you call them, the Coleman stove that you use at camp. It's a tabletop and two burners, and she used to use that just for very special treats, like burnt custard, which I loved, and we called it burnt custard, but I think here it's called creme caramel. And she would make pickles, like pickled eggplant and pickled limes. And speaking of treats, there was also things like scones and meat patties and cream horns, but they came from a local bakery. So we also had tea, of course. I mean, you couldn't have a British or Scottish or whatever household without tea. So we would have tea, but not in bags. We didn't have bags. We had just a leaf variety. And we had to be careful how sweet we made it, because sugar was rationed. So we had coffee, but it was a luxury. And the only time we could get was in a bottle. It was a liquid in a bottle. And it was called camp coffee. But it was very expensive, and it was not readily available. You'd have to go to the British cold storage to get it. So we didn't have it very often. Now the dinner, Christmas dinner, was also similar to what we have here, except the vegetables depended on what was available, because we had no refrigeration. So the cook would have to go to the market that morning and buy anything that was perishable that morning. So we could have, we knew what vegetables we were going to have with Christmas dinner. There was no cranberry sauce, and there was no turkey. It was always goose, except for one year, when we had to make do with a couple of chickens. But that's a story for another time. I'd be here all day. Okay, so Christmas crackers, which we call bonbons, were of course a must on the Christmas table. My grandchildren are laughing here because they know the story of the goose and having to have chicken that night. But anyway, dessert was plum pudding, which my mom made, and also almond iced fruitcake, like a marzipan icing with a hard top on it. So, and then we closed the year off with a watch night service, and that too was run by our youth group. We did it on New Year's Eve, and it was to give thanks for the old year and to welcome the new year. Now Epiphany had its own set of traditions. When I woke up on the 6th of January, there was another gift beside my bed. It, I was told, was left by Father Christmas on his way back to the North Pole. And my children will remember that too, because we used to do that. Now, dinner on Epiphany was a simple meal, except for the dessert, because what we had then was a coin wrapped in silver paper and then baked in an almond iced fruitcake. And after dinner, the whole family would get together and we would dismantle the Christmas tree, because we couldn't have it up. Past January the 6th, we couldn't have a Christmas tree. That was our tradition. So ours was always a very happy Christmas, which was the greeting that we used. We didn't say Merry Christmas, we always said Happy Christmas. And that's the way it was. When I was growing up as an Anglo-Indian child in a Muslim